I
And
think we're live.
we are live.
Do we want to make sure it's getting recorded somehow?
Well, I know it does record it after the
Oh, it
fact.
does. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Cool.
So the first episode of Raw live from a Dualistic Unity retreat. This is the second day of our mini retreat in Denver, Colorado. I just want to open up by saying how grateful and appreciative I am for everybody who is here, everybody who's made this possible, everybody who listens to the podcast, everybody who's never listened to the podcast and is just being themselves, pretty much everybody. I'm just really appreciative to be a part of whatever the hell this is. It's surreal to see, and it's life-changing in so many ways for me individually, and that's because I see it being life-changing for so many other people because of the work that they've done. So I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone, including you who's listening. This means so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Just to echo that, especially these days, going a little bit against the grain. It's funny how basic this conversation is. It's just recognizing what's real, and we've gone so far from that being willing to sit in that uncertainty, be willing to let go of what you think you are, let go of the false certainty that comes with knowing what's going on, what's happening in the moment. It's not the most comfortable thing. You're not going to get people telling you that, that's such a great thing that you're doing. Oh, you're feeling more free in yourself. That's amazing. Good for you. Because we're all so lost. We're seeing everything through a little straw, and it doesn't make us comfortable. We think there's something wrong with it. And so anyone who's willing to have the conversation, to be involved, to question all of it, despite everything that's going on, and how much we're running back towards that desire for control and certainty. It's incredible to see, and it's kind of blows my mind how many people, even just having, the amount of people we do have involved. I mean, it's growing like crazy, but that many people being willing to do that and continue to do it in their own life, because that's what it is. It's not for anyone other than you, for your experience, that priority. And it's got to be that. And there's nothing to believe in, nothing to follow, as much as everyone wants to think that this is some sort of crazy belief system. It's like, it's not. It's Ray said the other day, because whenever someone's like, oh, that not having a belief is a belief, it's like, is not playing a sport a sport? It's the same exact sort of thing. It's so funny, but we're so caught in believing that ideas and concepts are truth that we can't even recognize what is actually real anymore. But the more we recognize it, the more we recognize it. And so it's been a blast so far, this whole journey, and it's just so exciting that we're able to do as much human interaction, in-person interaction, as we do so quick, and just to see everything grow and change, and see the shifts in everyone involved, including us, and how much we're changing and growing and learning along the way. It's been a lot of fun, and the more we go through it, the more free you feel to keep stepping through it. The lack of concern allows you to keep taking those steps, and just understand that the progress is being made, whether you think that it is or it isn't, whether you're concerned about how quickly it's happening. It is. And sometimes going through some uncomfortable spots feels like you're taking a step back, but really it's just going through an uncomfortable spot, and it's another opportunity to learn that lesson, that your opinion isn't truth, your idea of what's happening isn't the reality of what's happening. Just keep going, keep paying attention, and eventually things, start making a little more sense.
Or at least you're not so concerned about them making so much sense, because you have a little bit more trust in yourself. And it's not trust in what you think you are. You've just been around long enough. You've gone through enough storms to recognize that you can weather them. And so you stop being afraid of them so much. But, it's so easy to see somebody that isn't apparently being battered by the storm and assume that they're not. And that's often the case when we talk about people who are on the path for a while and they gain some semblance of having like their sea legs, they're grounded. And so it's not that they don't experience depression or the risk of self-doubt. It's not that temptation to self-analyze isn't there. It's just that they're aware that it's there, that it's always an opportunity, or it's always an option in terms of what you can experience. And so they just kind of let it be, rather than digging at it, trying to get rid of it, rather than trying to make it not a part of them or any of those things. And so while it appears that they're not experiencing the same storm that you are, they are. They're just not as battered by the waves. And it's just because they've been on the sea for a long time. That's really it. And so, just a quick cautionary tale, don't make the assumption that people aren't experiencing the same challenges that you are just because they don't look as challenged. That just comes through practice. It's just like going to the gym. You lift weights often enough, all of a sudden you start to make it look easy. Somebody who just started is going to look at you and go, "Wow, that's easy for you." It's like, no, it's just I keep doing it. Right? There's this great story of this young man, and he gets a baby calf when he's very young. And so every day, part of his chores are to lead the calf onto the other field on the other side of the fence. But it's a long walk to the gate. And so, because the calf is so young, he picks the calf up and he just puts it over the fence every day. And before you know it, years and years go by, and he's basically lifting a full grown cow. And it's just because he didn't recognize the weight change from day to day to day. It's just became part of his life. And we don't see that we gain strength like that. Anything that we put time and attention into changes us. It's just that we forget the context. We forget where we came from, which is why sometimes the best thing you can do to move forward is just appreciate how far you've come. Just stop, arrive, and go, wow. Whew. And that's all you have to do. No opinions or preferences or anything. You don't have to pat yourself on the back. Just arrive and breathe a sigh of relief that you are here. And the more you do that, the more of a relief it is, because it's beautiful to be here. It's just that we're out of practice.
Absolutely. Yeah, we get so caught on judging, the specific situation that we're in or the specific situation that we're going through, and we get so hyper fixated on the short term. We're like, oh, this is what I'm going through right now. I'm going to judge this. I've only made this amount of progress. I shouldn't be experiencing this anymore. And we get so hyper fixated on that, and we don't recognize everything that's come up to this point, and even the ability to be so aware of it and just not let it shake you so much. I think that the highs and lows are going to continue to happen inevitably. You're going to keep going through more and more uncomfortable situations, and the more you recognize everything that you are, the more of a total experience that you're having. Like you're feeling not just what you're going through because of a lack of sensitivity to everything that's happening, but what all of you is going through. And it's just how little concern can you have as you go through those situations. Like there's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be discomfort, and there's no need to judge it, to say that, oh, this shouldn't be happening. Oh, I'm only at this spot. Oh, I've only made this much progress, and think that you have any semblance of an idea what exactly is happening, and being able to let go of that concern, just not be stressed about it, despite how uncomfortable it is, despite how difficult it may seem, and your idea of where you thought you were did not match that, because it never does. And being willing to continue to just take steps and continue to put yourself in those situations over and over and over and over. And as the less concern that you have, the more relaxed that you are, the more sensitive you are to the experience, the more you learn, the more you continue to take in. And then you're not only having the fullness of the experience because you're paying attention, but you're also gaining the experience of going through the discomfort simultaneously. And you're just going through experience after experience after experience. And how closely can you come to the recognition that there isn't a need to label them in any way, shape, or form. And so you just keep stepping through, and that's just it. You're going to keep learning. Things are going to keep changing too. We get caught in the perspective that I'm going to be seeing things the same way next week as I am right now. I'm going to be feeling the same way next week as I am right now. Oh, this might, how long is this going to last? Oh my gosh, this is so uncomfortable. How long will I go through this? It's like, you can just pay attention to where you're at. You don't have to get caught in thinking, how long is this going to last? How long should this last? How quickly should I be able to get over this? And then we start measuring how quickly we can get out of, that discomfort. And it's just ride it. Just pay attention to the experience that you're having. And that's what it always comes back to. No matter how deep you go with some of this questioning, it's just keep paying attention. Just keep paying attention. Keep paying attention. You don't know what's happening. Your opinion's more or less irrelevant to the situation at hand. And so you don't need to maintain it. You don't have to necessarily express it and hold on to it so tightly. There's a lot of strength in being willing to let go of those subjective opinions that you hold on to for so long.
I should probably pick this up so it sounds a little bit closer to my mouth. But, I'm glad you brought this up about the importance of sitting through discomfort, because we had a comment in the live streams, pretty much the first comment, and I thought it was funny. It was within 5 minutes of starting the stream. Somebody popped on. They're like, "You guys low-key suck at interacting with your viewers." And what's interesting is it's like, I've been to multiple live streams and you've never answered my questions. Like, man, we're live 5 days a week. Like, yeah, if you really want to talk to us, join a Zoom. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like the person who walks into a conversation and then they're pissed because you didn't immediately pay attention to them, right? It's like, hey, you're all going to stop because I'm here now, right? No. And what's nice is that we don't give a fuck if you're pissed. You're like, you've lost a viewer. No, you're just kind of cowardly. And the whole reason is just that you don't want to sit through the discomfort of actually having to figure shit out. You want us to answer your questions for you. You're so impatient for that answer, in fact, that you'll just reinforce your own prison by getting agitated and pissed off and then leaving. It's like, well, does it mean anything to you to grow? Because if so, then you're just going to sit there and listen and take it in. And when we address you, we'll address you if your question's worth addressing, because sometimes they're not, right? And our job isn't to hold your hand through this. If you really want to change your life, that's on you. If us not answering your question immediately is all the reason you need to disappear, then this really doesn't mean anything to you, and I don't want to waste my fucking time on you. At the end of the day, I mean, I'm just spinning my wheels anyway because you don't want to move. So that's a follower I can do without, because I don't want followers. I don't want people who follow. I'm not looking for somebody who needs my answers at all. So by all means, fuck off. And I say that with love. I really do, because at some point you're going to recognize that this is on you. It's not about anybody else meeting your expectations or helping you avoid the discomfort. If you want to grow, get uncomfortable, sit, shut up, and take it in.
Amen. And we even get caught on, just because of how we're brought up and kind of the system that we're born into, and this perspective of like a linear trajectory, having someone that we're trying to get to, some people we look up to. It's such a common thing. And it's not to say that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but when we get caught in looking up to one person or a couple people or whatever, be it, you play sports and you have your favorite athlete and you want to emulate them. But when you come back to recognizing that you are the entirety of your experience, like you are all that you know, we almost utilize those people to keep the recognitions at bay, like the depth of the recognitions, through believing that there's someone to become or some spot that someone else appears to be at that you want to be at. And it all just almost takes us in the other direction towards recognizing the reality of what we are and the freedom that there is to be experienced. So if you're seeing anyone in any degree of, and what you think they are, and looking up to anyone, even specifically, it's going to cut you off from being able to learn and grow from everyone that you interact with, and to be able to see that there is a potential to be learned, like a lesson to be learned in every interaction that you have, every person that you come across. Like we even are able to create this opinion that like there's certain people who know a lot of stuff, and there's certain people that there's nothing to be learned from. And literally everyone across the board has something that's quote unquote better than we have. They have alternate perspectives, things that they've learned, things that they've experienced. So literally every interaction that you have, there is no higher or lower, like looking up or looking down. It's looking at another iteration of yourself with other experiences to be had and things to be learned from. And so when you come back to that recognition that it is an even playing board across the board, and there isn't this idea of hierarchy, you start paying attention more and more to every interaction that you have, because we're so quick to label different experiences and measure different experiences. Like, oh, I'm going to pay closer attention to this because I deem this person to be more important or this person to be less important. There's so many lessons that we miss because of that. We get caught in making that immediate judgment about a certain thing, and it's just all made up inside of our mind. All of those perceptions of how we value someone else and how we value ourselves are merely perceptions inside of our head. They're merely our opinions. There is no objective value measurement system. We try, and we're fucking trying with the social credit system and shit to come up with something like that, but it doesn't exist in objectivity ever. Like it's such a mind-blowing recognition to realize that wherever you perceive your value to fall isn't where it's falling. Wherever you perceive someone else's value to fall is not where it's falling. Like it's never it. And yet we still think there's some degree of truth in that. And there's 0 degree of truth whatsoever in anything that you say, any interaction that you have. We're so quick to judge and measure how we're doing. And it's all completely wrong. And yet we'll settle upon that and then feel uncomfortable because of how we perceived a situation to go, which isn't the reality of how it went. And so when you start to realize that more and more, you just start paying attention. There's not, a right way to live, a right path to follow. It's just pay attention, let go of your idea of what you think is happening, recognize that you don't actually know, and it'll continue to unfold. We don't have to cling to a trajectory or a path that's going to get us to a specific spot. Like paying attention is enough. Paying attention is all you have to do, and everything unfolds from there. It's not that we pay attention because it's going to get us to a certain spot. The attention takes us to the spot, which is always just where we are. And it's just that over and over and over and over and over. So there is no path. There is no trajectory. It's just you paying attention. And the more you prioritize that, the more full your life is going to be inevitably, because you're actually there for it. You're actually living it.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how all of a sudden simple expressions like being here now or being present, it stops being like me being present and me being the present.
Mm-hmm.
It just changes entirely. You're coming from a totally different place. I should also pick up my microphone. I just wanted to mention to all the people in the comment section with the burning curiosity as to what we had for brunch today. I want to just settle this so you all know in the greatest detail possible. Food. We ate food.
I had a nice bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich. It was quite delicious. A nice little bed and breakfast type breakfast spot. Yeah, it was pretty damn good. But
I'm sticking with food.
it was delicious. But yeah, no, these retreats and the time together are pretty incredible. To cool. Just be able to have this close of an interaction, and even this week, this is a completely new environment for us as well. We've done 2 so far, but they've been in a completely different sort of geolocation, completely different setup. It's just some people hanging out in a house for a weekend, having a good time, enjoying each other's companies,
playing cornhole,
playing cornhole. Enjoying time around the bonfire and going on walks, and that's just it. Like that's what it comes down to, and the willingness to do that and just be here for you, and go through it for you, and be willing to let down your preconceived notions of what not only you think you are, but what you think is happening, what you think is going on in the situation and experience, and just be willing to sit in that spot in a completely new space, in a completely uncertain situation. And even just being here for everyone here and everyone who will ever be at a retreat, like that's a win right there. Mm-hmm. As much as these are awesome, amazing, relaxed experiences with people who are doing the same sort of thing, it's inherently an uncomfortable situation. Hanging with people you don't know in a situation that's unfamiliar, like there's a lot of inevitable discomfort and uncertainty just in coming to one of these.
Woo!
And so we think, oh, this is a great experience, and it's not to say that it isn't, but there is a lot of inevitable discomfort that comes with these, and that is how we grow. That is how we learn. So even just making the decision is an incredible step, and it's amazing to see over and over how often people are willing to do so and go through it for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing about these retreats or these opportunities to get together, is that it really isn't about Andrew and I. Andrew and I are just here to be here, and it's whatever you bring to the table, whatever work you want to do on yourself is what we're here to just sit with you through, and not to help you, but because you don't need the help. We're just there to remind you you don't need the help. That's really all it is. We're just like, yeah, you got this. And when we just talk to you while you've got this, that's it. It's just that we often forget how how strong we really are. We tell ourselves a narrative to the point where we actually start to feel overwhelmed by the thoughts we created. And we never think of it that way, but it's true. I had a conversation with somebody in our one of our groups on Patreon recently, and I was saying that it really comes down to just no longer being afraid of the deepest, darkest experiences that you can put yourself through. It's not being afraid of being depressed. It's not being afraid of being anxious. It's not being afraid of doubting yourself or judging yourself. It's not fearing these experiences, because it's the resistance to that. It's the resistance to that part of the process that makes them linger and amplifies them. You get stuck in them because you focus on them and you identify with it rather than just letting it pass. It'd be like if every time you felt a breeze, you stopped and braced yourself. You would never get anywhere. So instead, you have to learn that you can carry on. The wind's not going to knock you over, right? It just feels stronger than usual, but you are stronger than you think. Just have a little faith in that, and you'd be surprised how far you can go. But we really do tell ourselves we can't do something before we ever give ourselves a chance to find out. And it's just because it's easier to some degree. To some degree, it really is easier, and only in the short term. It's the long term where you can see the negative consequences. But by that point, you're so steeped in them that you're like, Jesus, how the fuck do I get out of this? And you're desperate for an answer. And the whole path seems to have vanished because it was under your feet and you're looking everywhere else.
Exactly. We really do get caught in that idea that the quote unquote journey path is linear. You know, we go from a lot of suffering to less suffering. And it's not to say that that isn't how it plays out, but we almost think it's like difficult, uncomfortable experiences to easy, comfortable experiences. Like we can maintain some of that perspective. Like, oh, I'm not feeling super comfortable right now. That means I've backtracked, when really it's going through the comfort, discomfort, the waves, and it's just how much we fight those waves as we go. It's that shifts. It's like you just stop fighting it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't continue to happen, but it doesn't have to handicap you. It doesn't have to hinder you. You can keep moving through it despite the discomfort. And there's so much to learn. Actually, a lot of different perspectives and experiences, and almost an energy to be gained from being willing to have that experience and that discomfort, and the degree of connection you can build. Like there's so much to the experience of discomfort, uncomfortable things, like putting yourself into those spots, because that's where the most learning happens. Like how many people second half of their life, they get comfortable in a certain spot, we've learned very little. You know, the most we ever learn is from 0 to 10. Like the amount we learn there relative to everything else is incredible. And we're just in a spot of uncertainty. There's nowhere to get, there's nothing to become, there's nothing we have to be. And we're just in that spot of being attentive to where we are. And why do we think that's where the most learning happens? And then we get stuck in a spot, or stay in a spot at some degree of comfort that we perceive to be, you know, the best for us. And we just stop learning anything, because in order to learn something, you almost have to be in an uncomfortable spot. You have to face discomfort, because the process of learning doesn't just jump from not knowing to knowing. Like there's a process in between. It's like growing pains every single time. And we get afraid of the growing pains without realizing that they are entirely necessary to the process of learning. And so we stop, and we gain this perspective that, you know, discomfort is the worst thing ever. We just have to avoid that. Whereas that is one of our greatest teachers, and it is not to be avoided. It's to be experienced and embraced, and just, if anything, let go of the idea that it's something that should be avoided. And then you're willing to step into any sort of situation and go through it without so much concern. And then there's so much more to learn, and so many more ways to grow, but you have to be willing to experience discomfort. If you can come to terms with that, There's not going to be so much that's going to hold you back.
Well said. Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. Like, this is why I always caution people about white knuckling meditation, as it were, is that, that's honestly, it can get in your way if you're always running for that calm oasis where you're not dealing with life and having to deal with it moment to moment to moment. Then you're actually making it harder for you to do so to some degree, right? It's just a matter of how much stress is eventually going to break you. But if you are in the stress, in the pressure, and you're learning how to just not let it settle on your shoulders from moment to moment to moment, then you are a state of walking meditation. You're always you. You're always present. You're always watching it go by with the state of non-attachment. It's not about sitting in the lotus position, because how long can you do that for? It really is just applying it all the time. All the time. And not because you should, but because you genuinely see why. That's all that works. This is why Andrew and I are always saying, like, we can't tell you you should do this. And honestly, it's not up to me whether you want to. It's not up to me whether or not you see the value in it whatsoever. There are lots of people who do, because they've finally gotten to a point where they've run around in circles enough that they recognize there's a loop I'm getting stuck in. So I'm going to have to question everything I think to find it, because I can't seem to see it. And it's at that point that we start to get a sensitivity to what that loop is. But until then, we just keep running in circles from one identity to the next, from one promise to the next, from one leader to the next. And it's just a matter of time until eventually we run that circle long enough that we go, this sucks. And it's not working. It's obviously not working. And we have a different conversation. But until you get there, there's not a fucking thing I can do for you. Not a damn thing. And then after you get there, I don't have to do anything for you, which is beautiful. All I have to do is relax and work on myself. And that's all I've been doing anyway. So I find it really laughable and beautiful at the same time that we can be sitting in one of these locations with a group of people in the backyard, relaxing, letting go of the reason that we hold off the world, the reason that we have all of this fear of everything, and just be a little bit more of ourselves. And we don't recognize it, but we're changing the world. The most revolutionary thing you can do in a world that's driven by egotistical division is be unified in yourself. And that just means relax, be what you are, stop trying to be anything. And that is unity. Because I always find this funny. It's like, oh, well, you're not being very pleasant. That's not a very unifying thing. It's like, I don't have to make things unified. They are unified. Like, that's the whole point. I'm like there's nothing I can do that's not unifying to some degree. It just comes down to whether or not you recognize your place in that. That's really all it is. So I don't have to worry about a thing. The work's on you. And as long as you know that, it's going to work fine.
Yeah, exactly. That recognition goes hand in hand with how we perceive ourselves as well. Like, we don't recognize that this is already unity. Like, even the question of like something being more or less unifying isn't that's not the spectrum right there. It already is. You can't do something separate from what is that is or isn't unifying, because you're an expression of unity. You are an expression of the whole. And so we maintain that perspective of ourselves, and we get caught in that thinking that, oh, I have to do something in order to become complete, in order to become worthy. And it's like, no, that's your baseline. What things are getting in the way telling you that you're not? And that's where the questioning comes in. That's why we push questioning so much, because it's not that there's something you have to add to yourself. It's just so many things in the way of recognizing just what you are, being reality, expressing itself. You are the manifestation. It's not something that you have to gain and come to and add to yourself. And as long as you think that, you won't recognize the reality of what you are. And so it's as much as it's all interconnected, it's that perspective of ourselves, and even just the idea that we could become more, that we could become more than what we are, that we could say something that would make us better than what we are, causes us to fear saying something that would make us worse or less worthy than what we are. And we always maintain those concerns, and just the illusion that value can waver whatsoever will keep you from the recognition of the reality of what you are, which is just it. Like, when it comes to right or wrong decisions, you're always making the right decision. It's just what degree of attention are you paying to that situation? because you can handle any situation that comes your way. There is no, you know, decision that you would ever possibly make, as long as you're maintaining attention, that's going to be so detrimental to your life that it changes things that drastically. It's a complete component of the experience, and as long as you maintain that attention, which can oftentimes be hindered by your idea of there being a right or a wrong decision, that's going to keep some attention for like what's right and wrong, and there's less attention to be paid to the situation that actually allows any situation to be, turned into the right decision just through that attention. But we get so caught in the black and white, in the idea that there is one thing that could happen that would change everything forever. And when we're not paying attention, that seems more reasonable. Like, oh, there is that, but it's not, because we're not paying attention. So if you come back to that, it's not so much about the decisions or the actions that you take. It's just how closely are you paying attention? How much of that story is hindering you from just recognizing what you are? Because there's not a story that's going to free you. There's not a belief, an idea of yourself, a measurement of your value that's going to free you. It's the letting go of the idea that your value could be measured, that there is anything you could do to become more valuable, that allows you to experience the freedom of a lack of desire to get to that spot or to become more. It's a different track, but you have to be willing to let go of that idea that you could measure your progress, you could compare yourself to anyone else. It's an impossibility, and we try to, and it hinders us from recognizing just what we are, which allows us to experience that degree of freedom.
Yeah, it's so funny that we try to compare to other people, not recognizing that like we all have our own very distinct experience of the moment, of each and every here and now, because it's all scaffolded on everything else that we're pulling from, right? And so we're like, oh, that person's obviously, happier and better than me. It's like, yeah, okay, let's just drop them in the moment that you're experiencing right now without any of the experiences that you've had. That person's gonna fucking flounder. That person's gonna be like, what the fuck is happening? And they're gonna look at you and go, help, because you have the sensitivity and the knowledge of what's happening because you've had the experience leading up to here, right? You are the best person for the job of here and now because you are the here and now. And we forget that. We compare. We're like, oh, that person's doing better. It's like, no, that person's doing the best they can, just like you. Just like you, they'll go up and down. They're going to get more stress and less stress. They're going to feel like they're doing great and they're going to feel like they're doing shitty. And it's the same experience. And it really just comes down to the recognition that neither of them are true. They're just part of the experience, that you can't feel like you're doing well without necessarily going through the experience of feeling like you're doing shitty. Right? Until you start to recognize that it's not about doing well or doing shitty. It's about how deep you're in the experience of doing. That's really it. Each and every moment comes down to the experience of here and now and the depth that you are committed to it. It's so funny that we miss this, but it's true in everything that we try to build. Like if I was to tell you, okay, here's this house, I want you to go and I want you to dust the whole house. And so you go in, you start rushing, you start dusting, you start knocking shit over, it's breaking. Now you have to spend more time to come and sweep that up and clean up all the other stuff. And so what do you figure out? You're like, I should slow down. In fact, the best thing I can do for this job is just slow down and take my time. And so you do. And that's exactly the lesson in everything. We rush through, we miss the details that would bring the quality of life that we all want. The quality of life we're looking for comes from the quality of our presence in the moment. It's not about what we're doing, it's about what we do with it. And we forget that. We start to look at this experience like it's a linear trajectory to happiness. But it's not. It's how deep in the moment are you? Because that is how fulfilled you're allowing yourself to feel. How deep into yourself can you allow yourself to be? And as somebody was having an insightful conversation with me yesterday here at the retreat, it really just keeps coming down to the same question. And it's up to you to decide whether or not it's worth finding out. Can I just let go? Can I just let go and stop judging my progress? Can I just let go and have faith in myself? And it's a question that you have to keep coming back to until finally you don't have to ask anymore. But you need to decide whether it's worth finding out. And when you do, that's when it starts to settle in. But you need to leap before it makes sense when you land. you need to jump. It's up to you whether it's worth it or not. Once you decide, that's what changes everything.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, the that process of letting go, even as you're saying that, it seems like we can start to think of it as something that's scary, and this whole thing, like, oh my gosh, am I gonna let go of everything? It's like it's funny because all it is experiencing reality fully. Like, we're experiencing reality through judgments and comparisons and perceptions and opinions, and valuing certain things above other things, thinking about what we got to do next, thinking about what's going to get us to the best spot as if we could ever possibly know. And letting go is just letting go of all of that, thinking that there is any degree of certainty that we could possibly maintain that would get us to a better spot than the one that we're in now. And we're constantly measuring certain situations, dusting the house. We may see that as a lower grade situation. There's somewhere else we want to get to afterwards, so we have to rush through it in order to get to the next thing. And once you start seeing how important it is, and just all it comes down to is paying attention, there isn't so much variability in the experiences, and those almost become secondary, not in a way that you don't appreciate them, but just that's not the primary thing, is how you're perceiving the situation that you're going through. Oh, is this a good situation? Is this a bad situation? Is there a better situation I could be in than this one? It's like, you're never going to know. So as you maintain that idea of what's better or worse, or judging the situation as you're going through it, judging yourself as you're going through it, all that is taking attention away from what could be the fullest experience you've ever experienced in your entire life. Like, that possibility is always there. Anything that we're going through could be the fullest experience that we've ever had. And all that comes down to is paying attention. And oftentimes the most uncomfortable situations give us the best opportunity to do so. And so we get caught in thinking that we got to avoid those. But if you come back to the recognition that it's just about paying attention, then there isn't so much of an idea of what a situation should be. It's like, I'm going to pay attention to this and find out what it is. I don't even really know what it is right now. And so I'm going to pay attention and try and find out. Like, we kind of glaze over everything. We never really take a good hard look at what is this. It's like, oh, this is this. We make some quick assumption. It's like, oh, I don't know about that. And it's like, we miss everything, every little detail that is all have things to be learned in. Like, you walk into a room even, and you start actually paying attention, you start noticing so many more things. But if you're caught in thinking that, oh, there's a better situation to be in, you're not even seeing this one. And so we're not even experiencing the situations that we're in, because we're so caught in our idea of what the better or worse situation is. And we live our entire lives trying to get to the best possible situation. And you never know to begin with. So if you come back to just paying attention and that being the ultimate priority, then everything else seems to fall in line, because you're taking in more. You're not missing so much. When you're caught in what the situation is or what it should be, or your judgment of it, you're not even seeing it. And so you're missing so much that causes you to continue to stumble, continue to miss things, continue to come back going through, the same lesson over and over and over. It's like, because you keep missing it. You keep not paying attention because you're afraid of it, or because you're trying to get somewhere else, or you're uncomfortable and you're fighting the discomfort. Like, if you just paid attention, you'll fully go through it. You'll fully experience it. Doesn't mean it's going to get more comfortable immediately, but at least you learn everything from it. And then you take that with you the next time it goes around. And it's like you move on through that. And then you keep going through more discomfort, keep learning more from that. And that then applied to the more comfortable situations and your appreciation for those. And it's just riding that. And yeah, it just comes back to paying that attention as deeply as you can, and noticing everything you can, taking in as much as you can from it, because that's your life.
It's interesting, because it gets progressively more difficult in a society that focuses on the avoidance of discomfort, that focuses on comfort, and in fact has increasingly advanced technological ways to create more and more comfort. And so all of a sudden, because that drives the economy, we got to sell all of these comforts, right? So we got to really push people wanting these comforts. What's that? You have, an itchy armpit. There's a product for that, and it's just like, don't scratch yourself. You may hurt yourself. Okay. We've got your back. $30, and that's what drives the economy. And then again, I would love everybody to check out the sock caddy. If you would like an example of what I'm talking about, this is a device, and I'm not kidding about that, where you pick it up, you put a sock on it, and then you put it on the ground and you hold it up here so you don't have to bend over to put the sock on your foot. You actually put it on your foot with this device, and then it pulls it up your leg for you, all so that way you don't have to go through the discomfort of bending over. So you can imagine why, so many people who could possibly use the very subtle exercise of folding at the waist don't get that exercise because there's a product there saying, don't worry about folding at the waist. We've got that for you with this plastic piece of shit. And thus we have more plastic. And that's really it, though, is that we're always looking for a way to make the discomfort go away. What's that? You're feeling depressed? Here's a pill. What's that? You don't feel like you're good enough with the ladies? You need a new car. What's that? You don't think that you're handsome enough? You need to go out and get like a glow over. You need to get out there and you get your hair done a certain way, buy certain clothes. Clothes make the man, don't you know? All this shit. And at the end of the day, it's just a way to avoid the discomfort of just being who you are. Just be who you are. Well, what if people don't like me? Well, what, you're going to put on a show? For how long? How long can you maintain that before that show starts to drop? And then they're still going to see you. So you may as well just cut the bullshit, dodge the bullet, and just be yourself now. Just be yourself now. If that person doesn't resonate with you, let them go. That's it. There's more people. There's a lot more people. But once you stop worrying about whether or not they like you, you can be yourself and you'll talk to more people. But right now, you don't want to talk to people because you're terrified they won't like you, which is oddly enough why they don't. Because they don't want to sit there trying to validate you. They don't want to sit there trying to make you fucking feel better all the time. They've got their own shit to worry about. And that's it. You have to be a light unto yourself. And at that point, other people can start to recognize that light when they're doing the same. But if you're always going around shuttering your light because you're scared that, people are going to be afraid of how bright you can be, all you're doing is cutting yourself off from your own potential. And for what? For what? For the comfort of people who are afraid to shine themselves? None of us are benefiting from that at all. Shine your light. Fuck it. Well, I mean, why not? You know the alternative. You know what it means to not do that. That's why you're feeling the way you do. Fuck it. Let's find out.
Amen. Yeah, we're so quick to assume that our perception of ourselves is the same that everyone else has of us. Our perception of how some situation went, that everyone else has the same exact perception, and we really do assume that a lot, like that we know exactly how a situation went. We have a judgment of a certain situation. We're like, oh yeah, that's how it went, and that's exactly how everyone else perceived it. Like literally everyone perceived it in a completely different way. And so it's like we can't even know exactly who likes or doesn't like us. And if you keep just stepping through, you'll remain relaxed enough to not get caught up in trying to avoid the situation that you're in, or create a cessation of the discomfort. But it is funny. It's like, no wonder we can't handle discomfort. There's a product for everything. Like our society is just that. It's just a group of things that allow you to avoid discomfort. Like as soon as you start feeling any of it, it's like, here's something to avoid that. Not to help you through it, or work through it and figure out where that discomfort's coming from, or what's leading to it, or what's under the surface with that. It's like, oh, you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable about yourself, about the situation that you're in, about your life. Here's something to make you feel better. And we never go into that. It's always just, oh, there's this deep fucking root. There's layers to it, layers to it, layers to it. Here's my experience of discomfort. Oh, there's some discomfort. Here's a way to avoid that. And we patch something else on, do something else, add something to ourselves, gain something. And then as soon as the discomfort arises in another situation, we need something else to look at that, as opposed to looking at the discomfort itself. being like, where is that coming from? I'm making this assumption of what's going on right now, or how it feels, and all you're feeling is the surface of it. And there's a lot down there, but because we keep trying to avoid that, we never dig into it. We never experience that. And that's, something with substances, certain drugs that allow you to go not only experience a little bit more of that discomfort, but dig so deeply that you start to see where it's coming from. And then all of those layers start to crumble within that. But it has to be from within. Like, you have to be willing to see the discomfort for what it is, not run away from it, not avoid it, and just dig into it. Be like, where the fuck is this coming from? I'm very curious. But you have to be willing to face it and experience it in order to see it. And we're always just, a little discomfort here. Oh, go that way. Avoid this. Take this. Do this. Act this way. And we're never willing to face it because we're so caught in thinking that that's the ultimate thing to be avoided. And so we create lives that are so disconnected from reality, so disconnected from those feelings, that we're so far from seeing where they're coming from. And eventually, everyone's discomfort really does come back to the same root and the same desire to avoid the depths of what this reality is. And there's so much on top of that we're not able to even come close to recognizing where we truly come from, and what we really are, because we're always just trying to avoid that surface discomfort. And it's until you look at it that you start to see more, and start to actually be able to work through it, and start to find more and more degrees of freedom with that.
See, so I can hear the immediate misunderstanding as soon as we're like, face the discomfort and you'll find freedom. Oh shit, freedom means no more discomfort? No, that is not what we're saying. We are saying you will find freedom from your fear of the discomfort. The discomfort is just the shit that you don't want to look at. It's the stuff that's unfamiliar. And so because it's unfamiliar, you doubt yourself, and so there's discomfort. If you weren't identifying with your progress, there would be no fear of failure. Okay? The discomfort would diminish, and you would just continue on. That's it. It's not that the discomfort ever goes away. It changes. It stops being discomfort. It just becomes what it is. It's discomfort now because of your preferences, because of your opinion of what this should be. It makes it more uncomfortable if you're resisting the unfamiliar, because the familiar is addictive. We identify with it. So I just wanted to make that very clear, that freedom is not the cessation of discomfort. It's the transmutation of discomfort into something else entirely. It just becomes more opportunity. It just becomes more growth. It becomes more of an expression of what you are unfolding. It no longer has the same harsh taste to it. Suddenly it's a whole flavorful experience. And it really just comes down to how deeply you're in it that allows you to appreciate it and get the most out of it. And so just keep that in mind, that when we're talking about freedom, we're not saying freedom from what you are. You're never going to escape what you are, and you are everything. And so as your awareness of that expands, you're going to see more and more of what that is, which is going to always test you, because with that more comes the temptation to become uncomfortable instead of just continuing on. So just keep that in mind. It helps.
Yeah, certainly. And even with that discomfort and the focus on it, and we have a very specific idea of what it is, and we feel like we're so certain of that there couldn't be another perspective of that. And when it comes down to it, like, discomfort's just a word. We have certain feelings, and we're like, oh, I'm really uncomfortable right now. It's like, are you sure? Like, what does that mean exactly? Like, what does feeling uncomfortable even really mean when you break it down? And if you're even willing to let go of the term discomfort, you can pay even closer attention to what that is, and really feel it, and go through it. And all it's doing is bringing your attention back to reality. And so as we feel it, it's bringing our attention back to reality. We fight that. We think that's a bad thing to be avoided. It's like we think reality is a bad thing to be avoided. Like, that feeling that we label as discomfort is just reality being like, I'm right here. And there's something that you're holding on to that is creating that experience. And it's like the experience of a friction with reality, a confrontation with reality. And oftentimes it's because we're in the way. The Krishnamurti quote, "There is no conflict without I." And so there's things that it's showing us, like, hey, there's still a lot in the way that's hindering your ability to fully pay attention to what is. And so it's like an opportunity to pay attention through what is, but it needs to get our attention in order to take us back to it. So discomfort is really just a shaking. It's like we have subtle discomforts. It's like a small shake, and then we have a lot of discomfort, and it's like a big shake. It's like, fucking pay attention. You're still holding on to some things, and we get that shake, and we're like, oh, it's shaking. How do I make this stop? Give me pills. Get this to stop. As opposed to like just paying attention. We're like, there has to be a better experience than this, and so we take away our attention from the experience itself, and we're like, I want to get to this experience, and so we miss reality, and we continue to live in concepts. But that discomfort, it is just a word. Like with everything, it's just words, but we all have a different idea of what that is. And like, discomfort isn't what you think it is. It's just another experience of reality that's different from other experiences of reality. And there's certain ones that, based on our childhood, based on our upbringing, we prefer over others. There's, if you're like a skateboarder and you do a lot of crazy tricks, like, you get probably a lot of discomfort, nerves, or whatever, but you have a different perspective on that, given that you've been through it so many times, and you kind of know what you're about to go through. And it's not to say that you know whether you're going to land the trick or whatnot, but you're going to have a different perspective on that than someone who's never experienced something like that. They don't really know what it is. And so in order to be willing to work through that, I think it can help to let go of the idea that even what discomfort is. And that in itself will allow you to pay a little bit closer attention, and that curiosity of even what it is or where it's coming from will just reinforce that attention and allow you to dig through some of those layers that are holding you back, including the idea of knowing what discomfort is and what you should do with it, as opposed to just being willing to sit in it and more or less find out what to be done with it.
Woo! That's a great point. It's funny. I when you think about like discomfort versus comfort, it's really what I like versus what I don't. It's like, I'm uncomfortable. Why? I don't like that. Well, that makes sense. I think we found a clue as to why this is uncomfortable for you. It's because you have an opinion that's in the way. So it helps to remember that in a lot of ways, just because it's just that we have that opinion, and we can let it go and really focus on what we're doing. And the benefit of doing so is that you finished what you're doing quicker and with greater efficiency. And all of a sudden, as a result of you doing it quicker and with greater efficiency, it suddenly becomes kind of fun, which is funny because we're like, this sucks. This isn't fun. While we do nothing to change that experience. Or like, I'm just going to sit here bitching about it, wondering why I'm unhappy. It's like, well, the bitching might have something to do with it. Just it might, and it's just that it feels good to have an opinion. It's reinforcing. It's like, I know who I am. I know what I like. It's like, yeah, but life doesn't give a fuck what you like. At the end of the day, life is taking care of itself. Life is living. What is. It's really not about your opinions and your preferences. I mean, yeah, you can use your opinions and your preferences based on your experiences. You can feel things out, but if you never question your opinions and your preferences, then all you're doing is living in a box that continues to close tighter and tighter and tighter. And it's about expanding that box. Or, and this is just throwing something out there, getting rid of the fucking box, getting rid of all the walls and saying, fuck it, let's just see what life is. And that's where that, that potential lies. But it really is just getting past the preference and the opinion, right? Because it's the preference and the opinion. It's the idea of ourself that gets in the way of what we might otherwise accomplish. How many things have been put in front of you in terms of being an opportunity to try something new or do something new or meet someone new, and you just came up with a narrative based on past experiences, worse than that, past perceptions of past experiences that now stop you from doing something now that there's no reason you can't do except for the story you've told yourself. And that's what I mean by the prison. It becomes comfortable to think you know who you are. Unfortunately, what you're doing is you're just reinforcing how much you think you can't do. So question that. Allow yourself to push past. And again, if you don't fear the failure, if you don't identify with the idea that you can fail, that it has anything to do with your value, then fuck it, why not? That's the whole point. Fuck it, why not? That seems to be the running theme of this conversation today. Just fuck it, why not? I mean, what do you have to lose? You've been thinking about yourself this whole time, and you know what that comes down to. You understand that you're going to be running in circles forever, trying to continuously feel better about the shit that's actually making you feel worse. You don't have to do that. You know, as Mark, our good friend Mark often says, you can just put it down. And you really can. It's accepting you can. Because once you start thinking about it, can I? Your brain's going to do that thing. No. And here's why. And that's the point that you have to put down as well.
Exactly. Yeah, you really can just put it down. It's almost like, when you're say people call it like doom scrolling or something on Instagram or TikTok, and you're so caught in your phone, and then you start having ideas and you start getting sort of thoughts as you're going through, and you're just kind of mindlessly scrolling through it, not even hardly paying attention anymore. And then you realize how much all the things that you're watching, and the story you're telling yourself as you're doing it, like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, blah blah blah. It's kind of reinforcing the shame that you feel that you're trying to create, even in the moment, a cessation of that discomfort. And then all of a sudden this fleeting thought of, oh, I can just put this down right now. I can literally just put my phone down right now. And then like you pick your head up, especially if you're outside or something, and you kind of just start looking around, like, oh shit, there's a lot here. I don't have to maintain that story. I don't have to maintain an idea of what's happening or what I'm going through, or where I'm at in life. I can just pay attention. There's a lot going on here. And so it's the same with our opinions and preferences and ideas and maintenance of ourself. It's like we keep getting caught in this loop of telling ourselves a story and what we can and can't do. Like, what if you stopped? What if you stopped doing that? What if, like your phone, you just set it down and started looking around in a degree of curiosity, wondering, what can I do? What can be done with this situation right now? What if I stopped trying to live up to anything? What if I stopped trying to live up to some made up expectation that I perceive others to have for me, but really I'm just maintaining myself? We use other people as an excuse in order to maintain those ideas of what we should and shouldn't do, but we're the ones buying in. It's your life, it's your experience, and you don't have to continue to maintain a story. And we do it out of safety, like we want to know what we are, but all we're doing is constricting ourselves more and more. Like we're grabbing onto our throat, squeezing tighter and tighter and tighter. And we can let go and take a deep breath and look around and find out what we're capable of. Like, you have no fucking idea what you're capable of. We really do think that we know, like, about approximately, I can do this. I can do that. I can't do that. It's like, you don't know either. You don't know. You have no fucking idea what you are or aren't capable of whatsoever in any situation. You get dropped into the most uncertain, unfamiliar situation. What's the first thing you do? You start paying attention, or you start telling yourself a story of how overwhelming this is, of how you can't handle this. Oh gosh, what if this happens? What if this happens? It's like, that's not necessary. You can just pay attention, and that's how you're going to find out. But we want to almost, we lack faith in ourselves, so we want to plan. We want to have an idea. Like, a plan is just a focus on one specific trajectory out of an infinite number of situations that could possibly happen. And we think that focusing on that, just because we can maintain this illusion that that's exactly how it's going to go, when it isn't. And so we prioritize that over paying attention, which allows us to see, the weaves and waves and ups and downs and everything that's going on, and really get the most out of that situation. Like, that's how the path continues to unfold as seamlessly as it does, is just through being attentive to everything that's happening, as opposed to an idea of what should be happening instead. We're so caught in going through something and thinking with no shadow of a doubt that something else should be happening. It's like, you don't know that. You have no idea. But you'll find out what's possible here. You can find out right now what you're capable of by letting go of that idea that you know what you should be doing. There's so much to be learned in every situation. You don't have to maintain the idea of what should be happening, because you don't know. and this is what is. Like, this is what's happening. There is no other thing that's happening ever. There's never another thing that's happening. You're always here now, experiencing what you're experiencing, and that's where it's found. That's where the path unfolds. That's where everything is learned. Everything is learned here and now. How closely are you paying attention, and how much are you able to learn through that attention that's being paid?
And I think it's important here to take a moment to reiterate for anybody who hasn't been following the podcast since the beginning for the last year and a half or so, that's what this is. The podcast itself was an exercise in me going, wonder if this person with shit tons of followers wants to chat with me and do an interview. Yeah, okay, I'll reach out. Oh, look at that, he does. Then afterwards, whatever he wants to do a podcast. And he did. We started doing a podcast, and then we're like, wonder if we can do this full time. And we did. And we're like, wonder if we could run retreats. And we did. And what's interesting about all of that, as we sit at a retreat, is that our brain was like, no. like immediately the brain's like, that's not familiar. That's not comfortable. I don't know if I can consider all the things that could possibly happen. Just give up. Just give up. And it's like, fuck it, let's find out. And here we are at our third retreat with 2 more already sold out ahead of us. Another one in the Netherlands that's almost half sold, where we're going to have 34 community members. It's going to be the largest Dualistic Unity event to date. And these things just keep creating ripples. And the only reason it's working is because Andrew and I don't sit there and try to make it work. We just put as much into each and every moment, each and every episode, each and every discussion, each and every one-on-one, each and every post that we do. We put all of our presence into what we are. And then the rest is just letting go. So back to the original question of, can you let go? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you from my experience, yeah.
Amen. Yeah, it's been funny like that as we continue to step through this, and we really do our best to embody everything we talk about as often as we do. And it's funny, as much as we'll say, we really don't prepare for anything, even when guests are on. Like, we'll do our individual research, we don't meet before, we don't schedule out a plan of like, this is the questions we should ask, these are the topics we want to bring up. It's just, we're going to be there as attentive as we can and kind of find out. And it's not to say that that's always comfortable to be able to do that. Like, there's a big chunk of me that's still like, no prep. You want to do this. You want to make sure have an idea of where it's going and how it's going to flow. And it's like, I just don't listen to that anymore. It's not to say that it goes away, though. It's not to say that you step into a new situation. You want to do retreats? Sure. It's not to say that it's like, yeah, let's do it. And I feel super comfortable about stepping into this new situation that I never ever thought in my entire life that I would ever possibly do, and I feel amazing all the time. No, it's not that. It's just how willing you are to shift your perspective on the discomfort, to recognize that your relationship with the discomfort, when the discomfort arises, it doesn't mean that you have to run. You can look at it, you can face it, and recognize that just because you're uncomfortable about it doesn't mean that you know how it's going to go. It doesn't mean that you know what's best or how the situation should turn out, or even on the micro level of individual experiences, individual conversations. Like, you still don't know how that's going to turn out. And just because you're uncomfortable going into it doesn't mean it's something that should be avoided or something that you should run from. Like, as you shift your perspective on the discomfort and get rid of the idea that it's something that you shouldn't experience, you learn from it, and you're able to just continue to step through. And that's really the lesson is, I don't have to maintain this idea of discomfort, that it's something that I need to run from, that it's something I can't handle. And as you keep stepping through it, you keep facing those discomforts, you keep experiencing those discomforts, and it's just your perspective that shifts on it. It's not something you run from anymore. And so you're able to step into new situations because it's not something that you're afraid of more. So yeah, we continue to step into uncertain territory. We're going to continue to do so, but don't ever get the idea that we're not uncomfortable when we make a decision like, oh, let's start doing this, or let's do that. It's like, yeah, you uncomfortable? Yeah, I'm uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm uncomfortable too. It's like, yeah, that's part of it, but it doesn't have to stop you. And that's the shift. And we get so caught in thinking, oh, that person's doing that person's stepping into uncertainty so much, they must never get uncomfortable, they just feel comfortable with the discomfort all the time. And it's not comfort in discomfort, it's just the perspective of discomfort, and recognizing that it doesn't have to dictate the following actions that you take. Like, there are multiple options that can be taken from the experience of those uncomfortable feelings. There's not only one option, there's a lot of different options. And as you're willing to see those more and more, you're willing to test out some of those other options and see where that goes. And then, you start to learn more, and things do start, quote unquote, working out. And you're like, oh, so maybe that discomfort is something that I can learn from. And it's not even something in silo. It's just something that's inevitably a component of trying new things. Like, all right, you want to try something new? It's going to be discomfort. Yep, fully aware of that, because that's not going to be something that's ever avoided when you try something new. So it's just a part of it. It's not even a consideration of whether or not it's going to happen. It's like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable bits as you continue to step into uncertainty. As long as you keep stepping, keep learning, and your perspective on it continues to shift to the point that it's not quite so overwhelming anymore.
Yeah, a little self-disclosure here. So I'm currently in Denver, Colorado, and as many of you know, I'm from Canada. I live on a small island in, in a very small town, and I live amongst the wilderness, as it were, for the most part. And so here I'm in a new country. I'm surrounded by 750,000 people, in a densely populated area that's quite noisy, and I'm meeting new people. I'm in a new location. I'm at a retreat. I'm being a host. I'm doing all this stuff. We have two different events happening within the next 10 days. And so there's all of this, and I can feel all of that. Like, even when Andrew's talking and I can feel it coming up to the point where I have to start speaking, I can feel it. I can feel it. It's like, it's just this energetic core that at one point I would have been like, oh God, I'm anxious. And I would start thinking about, what am I doing wrong? Oh God, it's because I can't do this. I'm not good enough. Oh God, I'm going to fuck it up. And now I just feel it. I'm just feeling it. I'm just watching it. I'm just letting it feel, doing its thing. It's not like it's comfortable. I just sit through it. I just sit through it. And then I do what I'm doing anyway. I do what I'm doing anyway. But the point is, because I'm sitting through the feeling, I'm also paying attention to where I am. I'm not escaping into the past or the future. I'm not escaping into the narrative to deal with the feeling. I'm using it to get closer to the present, which is what's going to inform whatever I do next. That's really all it is. It's not about not feeling these things. It's about not immediately translating it as something's wrong, because that's what we do. This is unpleasant. I'm obviously fucking up. No, actually, perhaps what you're feeling is just that increased sensitivity. Perhaps the increased sensitivity that you're experiencing right now is the presence that you need to align with the moment that you're about to experience. But instead, you run into the narrative. Instead, you run into your mind, and it actually works against the very thing that your body is trying to help you do. Pay attention. So don't resist the experience. Don't immediately think you know what it means. Just sit through it, and it will inform your presence.
Absolutely. Yeah. I find it very funny because I go through the same exact thing all the time. And no matter how it may look on my face, there's always like little things that come up. Absolutely. Like everything I step into, even just, setting this up. It's like, oh, we're about to have a conversation on a live stream with a bunch of people and everyone at the retreat for 2 hours. Like, I literally have no idea of anything that I'm gonna bring up. There's not an insight specifically that I'm chewing on. It's like, if I'm kicking this thing off, I have no idea where it's gonna go. And it's a different degrees of discomfort, and it happens every single time. There's some semblance of that in so many situations, and so we see someone who does it a bunch and just thinks that like they don't go through it, and it's not that at all. It's really just your perspective of it. Like, it doesn't have to stop me anymore. When I was younger, I used to think that I would get super nervous for things, or worried about things, or concerned about things in the future, and just fearing how it's going to reflect on me. And I always had the perspective, I brought it up before, but that, oh, if I just get rid of those feelings, if I'm just never nervous ever again, then I'll be able to do everything that I want to do, like all those things that I knew that I wanted to do, stuff like this. And it was just, I just need to get to a spot where I get rid of these. So therefore I have this perspective on these things that they're wrong or bad. And so I fight them and I try and get rid of them. And it only ever made them worse. And the only thing I ever realized was that those don't go away. Like they don't leave you. It's not about getting rid of them. It's not about even overcoming them. It's just about shifting your perspective of them, letting go of the duality of the experience of being comfortable or uncomfortable, or worried or nervous versus super confident and excited. Like you don't have to label the experience that you're going through, even because, as I said, with discomfort, nervousness, worry, excitement, confidence, those are all just words too. Like we forget that very often, that those are all just words. Like your perspective on any of those words is going to be different than my perspective on any of those words. And there's certain things, actions people take, things people do that we perceive to be confident. And we see someone who we think is confident, and we're like, oh, that must mean that they experience this. You don't know that. You don't know what's going on inside of them. You never do. You never understand the or know the exact perspective that they're going to take. And so it's not about, the actions that you take don't need to be dictated based on how you feel, or the internal experience that you're having. You can do things despite how uncomfortable you may feel in the moment. And there's going to be new insights that arise from that, even just stepping through that discomfort. So, stepping into a situation that is entirely unfamiliar, uncomfortable, uncertain, there's going to be a whole plethora of insights that you wouldn't have experienced if you stepped into it super confident, feeling so good about yourself. Oh, I've done this before. I can handle this. This is going to be so easy. It's like there isn't that sort of intensity of the experience. And so even with that, understanding that, like, I guess you could call it a degree of trade-off, kind of like when you get super high, like, you start for, like, your short-term memory just goes to shit. You're trying to maintain this point. You're like, I'm going to make this point. Fuck, it went away. Hold on. Let me get back to being attentive to this. Oh, here's a big insight. Oh, and it's like that balance between just letting go of the concern and diving into things and just being willing to continue to flow with wherever the conversation is going, and wherever that insight is taking you. But if you're maintaining a specific path or trajectory of how the best way for a situation to go, you're not going to have that same sensitivity. You're not going to have that same energy. There's going to be a limitation to the insights that you garner from that situation, just because it's something you're desiring, and maybe it's something that's familiar. And so the insights are familiar. As you step into this discomfort, the insights, there's a whole new grouping of insights that are waiting there. And you've already been through the ones that are comfortable and the familiar ones. And in order to tap into that group that isn't something you've necessarily experienced, it has to be an uncomfortable situation. You have to be willing to step into something new. And that's going to come with discomfort and what we call anxiety or concern or nerves. There's going to be components of that, but it's not something that ever has to stop you. And it's not something that you have to have an overlaid opinion upon. Like, they're just objective terms for specific experiences. And we don't have to create an idea that some should be experienced more often than others. Like, you're experiencing what you're experiencing, and your idea of what you should be experiencing is just going to take that attention away from the experience that you're having. You don't have to maintain the shoulds or the ideas of the right way to feel, or the right thing to say, or the right thing to do. You just keep doing, and keep focusing on what is and what's real.
And as we're going to wrap up here shortly, if you are in the Denver, Colorado area and you would like to put this into practice, step out of your comfort zone a little bit, have some fun with us, we're going to be at karaoke on Wednesday, June 14th. At an undisclosed bar in Denver. It's starting at 9:00 at night. We will post the location. Actually, I already have. It's on Patreon, patreon.com/dualistic unity. The details are there, or just keep an eye out on not Andrew Murnane on Instagram. He will post some details as we approach the 14th of June, because karaoke is a great opportunity to get outside your comfort bubble, to push yourself and to do so with the Dualistic Unity community is just a fucking great experience, because nobody wants to be judged, and so nobody's judging. It really is just fuck it, let's have fun. And frankly, because it's so much fun, it's some of the best performances I've ever heard. It doesn't have to be the best singing, because the performance isn't about the singing. The performance is how much you're enjoying it. For anybody who can appreciate how much you're enjoying it, anybody with the clarity to appreciate you. And that's what we're all working on. So if you can join us, we would love to see you. We are going to wrap up here. To answer the question from the comment section, no, I do not believe that we're doing a Patreon call today. Can't promise anything, but we are at the mini retreat, and so we're likely going to hang out here and play some games outside, chill out, get high, and do all that. But that said, anything's possible. If we do end up going online, we'll let you know on Discord, or we'll post an announcement on Patreon. We will be live throughout the week from time to time. We're still going to do raw episodes when we can. And we just appreciate all of you being here. But if you can join us at karaoke, we would love to see you.
Absolutely. And we had a nice, fun karaoke night last night. Great time in the basement here. But yeah, that's going to be a ton of fun. So it's been a blast so far. Excited for the rest of the week in Denver. I appreciate everyone for tuning in to the live stream here. And yeah, we'll be in touch with you soon.
Hell yeah. Goodbye, everyone. We'll see you soon.
That was awesome.
It was awesome.